I was 31 years old the autumn I discovered what a sealed envelope in a dead, quiet hallway could do to an entire family. My grandmother turned 80 the first Saturday of November. She'd spent that entire morning baking from scratch, a lemon pound cake layered with cream cheese frosting, her signature since I was old enough to remember standing on a step stool beside her, snaking spoonfuls of batter when she looked away. She'd set the dining table for 9, pressed cloth napkins, the china she only used for occasions, a mason jar of dried dahlias from the backyard. She even wrote everyone's names on small folded cards. Not one person showed up. My parents were at a wine retreat in the mountains of Vermont. My uncle sent a voice message at 3:30, 30 seconds, laughing in the background, a quick love you, happy birthday, Gran. My aunt didn't reach out at all. My cousin posted a photo of a sunset to his social media with the caption grateful. I had just come off a 10-hour shift. I grabbed a gas station flower arrangement, drove 4 hours through highway construction and November rain, and let myself in through her unlocked front door at just after 9 that evening. The dining room told me everything, 9 place settings still in position, the centerpiece dried dahlias she'd arranged by hand. The cake in the center of the table, candles melted into waxy puddles right down into the frosting. A half-gallon of strawberry ice cream sat beside it, sweating onto the tablecloth. Gran was at the head of the table, both hands wrapped around a mug of cold tea, still in her good cardigan. She looked up when I walked in. Something crossed her face, surprise, then relief, then a kind of embarrassed sadness she quickly smoothed over. Marisol, she blinked. What day is it? It's Saturday, Gran. Your birthday. I'm sorry I'm late. She touched the edge of the cake. Oh, I wondered if I'd gotten the day wrong. I didn't tell her nobody else had gotten the day wrong. I found 2 forks, cut us both a generous slice, and we ate standing at the kitchen counter because the dining table, with all its careful preparation, felt too heavy to sit at. I sang to her. She made me sing it twice, the second time slower, laughing at herself for forgetting the words. Around 10, I helped her down the hall to bed. She was lighter than I expected, the kind of lightness that makes your chest ache. As I tucked the blanket under her chin, her hand caught my wrist. Her eyes, which had been drifting all evening, suddenly went sharp. They think I haven't noticed, she said, very quietly. I waited. She was already asleep. Welcome back to Unspoken Drama Stories, where the people nobody takes seriously turn out to be the only ones paying attention, and where doing the right thing quietly is always louder than doing the wrong thing loudly. If stories about fighting for someone who can't fight for themselves hit somewhere personal for you, drop a comment below and subscribe so you don't miss what's coming. I need to tell you who I am in this family so you understand how all of this lands. My name is Celeste Wren. The Wrens of Millhaven are comfortable in that particular way that looks like ease but operates like performance. My father, Douglas, had spent 30 years as a regional director for a commercial insurance group, and when he retired early, he called it transitioning into consulting. Even though mostly he played golf and attended fundraisers, my mother, Patricia, chaired 2 nonprofit boards, organized the annual hospital gala, and kept a household that ran like a stage production. My uncle Marcus, my father's younger brother, built a mid-size residential development company over the course of a decade, drove an imported SUV that cost more than most people's annual salaries, and had a handshake so confident it felt like a claim. Then there was me, the quiet one, the paralegal. I worked at a 3-attorney elder law practice in the city: wills, revocable trusts, guardianship applications, power of attorney filings. I made $44,000 a year, studied for the bar exam on my lunch breaks, and drove a 12-year-old sedan with a cracked dashboard. At family gatherings, my mother would introduce me with a tilt of her chin. Celeste does legal filing, you know, the administrative side. As if I were alphabetizing folders rather than building legal architectures that protected people at their most vulnerable. But this house, my grandmother's house on Fenwick Road, this house had always been mine in every way that couldn't be put on a deed. I took my first real steps on the back porch tiles. My grandmother, Elena Wren Gran, taught me to read a rental agreement at her kitchen table when I was 19, walking me through each clause with a red pen, telling me never to sign what I hadn't read. She signed my first apartment lease when my parents said they didn't want the liability. The guest bedroom there still had the same water stain on the ceiling above the bed that I'd memorized as a child lying awake. So when I drove 4 hours in November rain just to sing her a birthday song she asked me to repeat, I wasn't doing something extraordinary. I was just the only one who showed up. Around midnight, I got up for a glass of water. In the hallway, behind a framed photograph of the whole family at some long ago Christmas, I found a business card propped against the baseboard. Hartley and Cole Realty, a woman's name I didn't recognize, and on the back in pencil, EST value $740K, expedited closing available. I put it back. My hands didn't shake, but something in my ribcage did. Sunday morning, Gran slept in. I cleaned the kitchen. The cake went into a container. The melted wax came off the tablecloth with a butter knife and patience. I stacked the good china carefully back into the cabinet, and as I did, I had the terrible thought that the next time those plates came out might be after. I pushed it away and kept scrubbing. At 10:15, someone knocked on the front door. 2 people. A woman in her early 60s, silver, streaked hair pulled back, a structured coat, a leather briefcase that looked as though it had traveled to courtrooms. Beside her, a younger man in his late 30s carrying a notary's embossed seal in a zippered leather case. Celeste Wren, the woman's voice was measured, unhurried. Yes, my name is Diana Holt. This is my associate, Connor Marsh. Your grandmother retained our firm approximately 16 months ago. She extended a sealed envelope toward me, thick, cream, colored, my grandmother's full name printed in blue ink on the label tab. Her own signature crossed the sealed flap, looping, deliberate, every letter connecting to the next. The capital E in Eleanor sweeping into a long, confident tail. She asked us to bring this directly to you, Diana said. Personally, when the time came for what? Diana glanced briefly through the screen door to the living room, where Gran's recliner was just visible. Her expression softened barely, like a thermostat dropping 1 degree. Come to our office when you're ready. She pressed her card into my palm. Don't mention this to your parents or your uncle before we speak. They were gone before I could assemble a follow-up question. I stood there on the porch holding the envelope. It was heavier than it looked, maybe 50 pages, and Gran's signature across the seal was not the signature of someone confused. It was the signature of someone decided. My phone vibrated. A text from my mother, Patricia, who was just at the door. Do not sign anything. I turned the phone over and carried the envelope inside. I sat at the kitchen table, the same table where the uncut birthday cake had sat just hours before, and ran my thumb along the sealed edge. I knew every detail of my grandmother's handwriting, the specific height of her capital letters, the way the lowercase closed in on itself like a private thought. This was not a signature pressed by an uncertain hand. This was a signature placed by a woman who understood every consequence of what she was putting her name on. I broke the seal. Inside, a recorded property deed, a trust instrument, a durable power of attorney. Notarized witness pages, a physician's letter on medical letterhead dated 16 months ago. And clipped directly to the front, a handwritten note on Gran's personal cream stationery, blue ink, that same deliberate script. Celeste, when they arrive for the house, open this. Everything you need is already done. I love you. I'm sorry it has to be this way. It has to be you. I read it 4 times. Each time, the phrase when they arrive landed differently. Not if, when, she had known. 16 months ago, before the forgetting had taken hold, before she started mixing up names, before the afternoon she drove to the pharmacy 3 blocks away and ended up 2 miles in the wrong direction and had to be guided home by a neighbor. Before any of that, she had seen it coming and she had prepared. I closed the envelope and pressed both palms flat on top of it. In the next room, Gran was snoring softly in her recliner, a crossword magazine listing off her lap. She had hired an attorney, she had signed documents, she had left instructions for me specifically. That note did not let me sleep. I lay in the guest bedroom with the envelope on the nightstand, staring at the water stain on the ceiling I'd memorized as a girl, listening to the house settle around me. Monday morning, I called into the office for the first time in 2.5 years. Something in me said stay. I found it before noon. A realtor's combination lockbox, the kind agents attach to a property for private showings, clamped tight to the back of the gas meter, tucked behind the rose bushes at the side of the house where no one would see it from the street. I had processed enough real estate closings at work to recognize it immediately. Someone had been bringing buyers through this house. I went back inside and sorted through 3 weeks of unopened mail stacked on the entry table. Buried between a utility bill and a catalog, a property listing sheet printed on Hartley and Cole Realty letterhead. The same agency as the business card behind the photograph. 3 bedrooms, original hardwood floors, deep lot, asking price $40,000, $5,000 below the most recent neighborhood comparable. Off-market, private sale, and in the kitchen junk drawer, the worst of it, a purchase agreement, unsigned but completely filled in. Buyer, Meridian Capital Holdings LLC, cash offer, 30, day close. The seller's signature line was blank, but someone had penciled an E. Wren in block print below it as though practicing, the listing representative, Marcus Wren, my uncle. I sat on the kitchen floor with the pages fanned around me like pieces of a puzzle I hadn't wanted to solve: the lockbox, the listing sheet, the purchase agreement, the realtor's card, a sticky note in my mother's unmistakable handwriting, target close, deck, third, that was less than 4 weeks away. I picked up the sealed envelope. This time I opened it past the cover note, to the first page of the trust instrument, and I read every word. Then I called my mother. Patricia's phone manner has a specific register she uses on people she is managing, warm, slightly elevated, the voice of someone accustomed to running meetings and organizing charity luncheons. She deployed it immediately. "Oh, Celeste, sweetheart, how is Gran doing? We had such a lovely time in Vermont." The foliage was, "There is a realtor's lockbox on Gran's gas meter," I said. A pause, 2 seconds, 3. "That's being attended to. Your father and Marcus have been working through some transition planning with a lovely agent. You know Gran can't realistically manage a house this size on her own anymore, and there's a purchase agreement in her kitchen drawer with her name penciled onto the signature line." Celeste, the warmth dropped a full register. "This is a family conversation between your father, your uncle, and me. We've been managing Gran's situation for several months now. You don't need to involve yourself in the details. Does she know the house is being sold? She knows what's relevant for her to know." I heard the clink of a glass. My mother continued, "Marcus's company is going through a genuinely difficult stretch. The equity in this house solves a real problem. It covers proper memory care for Gran and helps your uncle stabilize his business. It's responsible planning, Celeste. It's her house, Mom. Another register drop. Cold now, flat, final. Your grandmother has a documented cognitive decline. She leaves the stove burning. She got lost driving to the pharmacy. She is not equipped to be making unilateral decisions about a property worth $750,000. And then she said it, the sentence I have never been able to unhear. She won't recognize the house by New Year's. The line sat silent between us. It's fortunate, then, that I will recognize it for her, I said. I ended the call. I set the phone beside the sealed envelope and Diana Holt's business card under the kitchen light. Tonight I read. Tomorrow I drove. Diana Holt's office occupied the upper floor of a renovated Victorian on Westgate Avenue. The waiting room had worn Persian rugs, a wall of framed credentials, and a small engraved plaque that read, Holt and Marsh, Elder Law and Estate Planning. I had called at 7:40 that morning. Her assistant transferred me in under 90 seconds, which, if you have spent any time in legal offices, tells you that call was expected. "M.S. Wren," Diana's voice carried the same composed weight it had on the porch. "I'm glad you came. Sit down." She had a pot of black tea and a box of tissues positioned with careful neutrality between us. No comment. "No preamble. Your grandmother first contacted our firm 16 months ago," she began. "It was a Tuesday in late July. She'd had a frightening episode the week before. She'd become disoriented while driving. Ended up in a town she didn't recognize. Couldn't locate herself on the map app her phone kept offering her. A stranger at a gas station helped her find her way back. She called me 2 days later. She already knew her practice. Her friend Vera had used us for an estate trust a few years earlier. Elinor came in alone. She was composed, specific, and Diana chose the word carefully. She was frightened. Not of losing her memory, of what would happen to the house while she was losing it. What did she tell you? She said, "My son will follow whatever his wife decides, and his wife will sell this property the moment I can't prevent it." She said it without anger. Diana continued. Just as a fact she had assessed and accepted. She wanted to act before the window closed. What window? Legal capacity, the ability to execute binding documents while she still fully understood their implications. She knew she had a year, maybe 18 months before that window narrowed past the point of reliable use. She came prepared. She brought the original deed, 5 years of tax records, and a handwritten list of questions she'd drafted in advance on yellow notepad paper. Diana opened her own copy of the envelope. She wanted exactly 2 things: to protect this house and to choose who would be responsible for protecting her. She did not choose her son. Diana looked at me steadily. She did not choose her son. That sentence settled into my chest like something heavy and inevitable. My father was Elinor's only child. He'd grown up in that house, eaten birthday cake off those plates, been carried to bed down that same hallway. And when she needed to trust someone with the architecture of her life, she had looked at him and looked past him and landed on me. Because she knew Douglas would defer, she knew Patricia would calculate, she knew Marcus would need. Your grandmother executed all documents on the 14th of August, 16 months ago, Diana continued. Full legal capacity, confirmed in writing that same day by her neurologist, Dr. Avery Sims. Diana placed the physician's letter on the table between us. He examined her specifically for that purpose, to create a contemporaneous record that she understood everything she was signing. She walked me through each instrument in sequence. First, a revocable living trust. Elinor had transferred the house, the deed, the title, every recorded interest into the Elinor M. Wren Revocable Living Trust, dated August 14th. She was the trustee while she maintained capacity. I was the successor trustee. The moment she was determined to lack capacity, legal authority over the property passed to me. Not to my father, not to Marcus, to me. Second, a durable power of attorney naming me as her agent for all financial and health care decisions. Durable meant it did not expire when she got sick. It activated. Third, the physician's letter from Dr. Sims. 2 pages of clinical documentation confirming that on August 14th, Elinor Wren understood precisely what a trust was, what a power of attorney authorized, and that she was placing her home beyond the reach of anyone she had not specifically chosen. So the house isn't technically hers to sell as an individual anymore. That's right, Diana said. The property belongs to the trust. Elinor, acting in her personal capacity, cannot transfer it. And any power of attorney held over Elinor personally carries no authority over assets that have already been moved into a trust. Only the trustee can authorize a transaction, and the trustee is me. Once Elinor's incapacity is established, and based on what you've described, the successor trustee provisions may already be active. Diana leaned forward slightly. There's one more thing I need to raise. If your family has recently had her execute any newer documents, a replacement power of attorney, a listing authorization while she was no longer cognitively equipped to understand them, those instruments may not hold. They may have had her sign something. I drove back to Fenwick Road that evening with all of that settling inside me like sediment after a storm. The house looked the same from the street. Porch light on, living room window glowing, Grand Scylla wet in the recliner through the curtain shears. I let myself in with the spare key she'd pressed into my hand when I was 16, the key she had never given to my parents. Gran, I said softly. She looked up. A long pause, 3 seconds, 4, and then something rare happened. Her eyes cleared, not the pleasant, drifting warmth of her foggy days. Truly clear, like looking down into still shallow water and seeing the bottom perfectly. You went to see Diana, she said. I stopped. You remember Diana? I remember enough. She turned her glasses over in her hands. I remember being scared and driving myself to a lawyer's office and telling her what Patricia would do. Did I get it right? I sat on the arm of the couch and looked at her. You got it exactly right, Gran. She nodded slowly. They've been bringing people through on Thursdays when the home aide is here. I can hear the doors open. Strangers walking through my kitchen, looking at things. I know. Your father doesn't meet my eyes any more when he visits. He talks about the weather. She pressed her lips together. Marcus brought papers a few weeks ago. He sat right there and put a pen in my hand. I don't remember what I signed. I reached over and held her hand. Whatever you signed, it doesn't change anything. You already took care of everything. She squeezed my fingers. Her grip was thin, but there was intention in it. I'm still here, Celeste, she said quietly. Those words, careful, fierce, fragile all at once, stayed with me. She might not recall saying them come morning, but I would hold them for both of us. Marcus arrived Wednesday afternoon. He didn't knock, he never knocked. He walked in like he'd been invited, car keys jingling, a smile already arranged on his face. He smelled like expensive cologne, and the kind of confidence that doesn't notice other people's discomfort. Hey, Celeste, he touched the top of my head in that older. Cousin Way, just checking in on Gran, that's sweet you're here. I'm staying for a while. Oh, sure. He opened the refrigerator, helped himself to a sparkling water, and leaned against the counter like someone taking ownership of a room. Taking some personal time from the paralegal grind. He said paralegal the way some people say hobby. Marcus, I said, I know about the listing. His sparkling water paused halfway to his mouth. 1 beat. 2. Then the smile shifted, not gone, just recalibrated. From warmth to negotiation. Look, I won't pretend the timing is comfortable, he said. But here's the reality. I've got a debt maturity coming in 7 weeks, $680,000. If I miss that window, the lender calls the notes on everything, 3 years of projects, all the contracts. It's gone, all of it. You understand what that means, so you're liquidating Gran's house to cover it. I'm managing a family asset for the benefit of the whole family. He set the can down. Gran gets a proper facility, private room, full staff. Your parents stop carrying the stress of managing a property. I keep my business standing. Everybody in this family benefits. Except Gran. Gran doesn't know what day it is. His jaw set. He stepped closer. Don't be dramatic about this, Celeste. Family takes care of family. Is that what you told her when you put the pen in her hand? He stared at me for a long moment. Then the smile came back, but there was nothing behind it now. It was a prop. The close date is already set, he said. This is effectively done. He left his empty can on the counter and walked out without rinsing it. That night I found it. In the bottom of the hall, credenza, under a stack of old magazine issues, a power of attorney, signed by Eleanor Wren, dated September 19th, barely 6 weeks earlier. It named my father, Douglas Wren, as Gran's agent for all financial and property-related decisions. Stapled directly behind it, a listing authorization granting Marcus Wren the right to act as the seller's representative for the Fenwick Road property. I carried both documents to the kitchen table and placed them beside the originals from Diana's envelope. The difference in the signatures stopped my breath. Eleanor's documents from 16 months ago, the trust instruments, the power of attorney naming me, showed strong, even pen pressure. The loops in her cursive were clean and connected, each letter flowing into the next with the momentum of a woman who'd written in long, and her entire life. The capital E in Eleanor swept upward with that distinctive flourishing tail. I knew this handwriting. This was the woman who had annotated recipe cards in perfect cursive and signed birthday cards with a fountain pen. The September power of attorney, trembling lines. The letters barely reached their proper height. The loops collapsed. The pen had been lifted between words, leaving gaps in the flow that should have been continuous. This was not the signature of a woman who understood what she was authorizing. This was the signature of a woman who had been told where to press the pen. I checked the date on my phone. September 19th, my stomach turned over. September 19th was 4 days after Gran had been taken to the emergency room following a fall in the kitchen. I had received a text from my mother. Gran had a tumble, nothing serious, she's resting, don't worry yourself. I had sent flowers I had not driven out. The discharge paperwork buried in the mail stack told a different story. Patient disoriented on admission, intermittent confusion, recommend neurological follow-up within 2 weeks. They had put a pen in her hand during the same week she had been admitted for disorientation. I photographed everything. Then I called Diana. Diana drove to the house the following Friday to the house, she said, not her office. She said it mattered that we work at Eleanor's own kitchen table. When she laid everything out, I understood why. The table was old oak, worn smooth from decades of family dinners, ringed with coffee stains. Eleanor had always called its history. Now it held 5 documents in a clean row. Document 1, the recorded trust deed, filed with the county registrar 16 months ago. The house had been placed into the Eleanor M. Wren Revocable Living Trust, stamped, registered, public record. Document 2, the durable power of attorney naming me, executed the same day, 2 witnesses, notarized by Connor Marsh. Document 3, Dr. Sims's capacity evaluation letter, 2 pages, clinical and specific, Mrs. Wren demonstrates full comprehension of the nature and effect of the legal instruments she is executing. She is oriented as to time, place, and identity. She articulates her intentions with clarity and consistency. Document 4, the September power of attorney, shaky signature, no capacity evaluation on record, no independent witness. Executed during a week of documented clinical confusion. Document 5, the listing authorization, Marcus Wren as seller's representative. Hartley & Cole as the agent, a private off-market sale priced below current neighborhood comparable value. Diana placed her hands flat on the table. The property has been held inside a trust for over a year, she said. Eleanor cannot convey it as a private individual. The September power of attorney, even if it were valid, does not extend to assets held inside a trust. And it is almost certainly not valid, given the medical record. She looked directly at me. This sale cannot happen. They never had the legal right to sell it. I stared at the 2 signatures side by side, one strong, one broken. The physician's letter drawing a clean line between the woman Eleanor had been and the woman they had tried to exploit. She won't recognize the house by New Year's, but she had recognized it. She had recognized the threat 14 months before any of us, and she had acted. Diana and I built a plan, deliberate, methodical, constructed from documents rather than anger. First priority, a current cognitive evaluation for Gran, something a court could rely on to confirm that the September instruments had been signed when she lacked the legal capacity to understand them. That meant Dr. Sims's office. I called Monday morning. I was placed on hold for 9 minutes. When the receptionist returned, her voice carried that careful, layered quality I recognized from my own work, the tone reserved for delivering institutional bad news. I'm sorry, Ms. Wren. We received a directive to restrict access to Mrs. Wren's medical records. I gripped the phone. From whom? I'm not authorized to identify the requester, but the instruction specifies that records and evaluation results are not to be released to anyone other than the designated authorized contact. And who is the authorized contact? A pause. Douglas Wren, my father. They had locked me out of her medical file. I sat in the clinic parking lot with my forehead against the steering wheel. This wasn't just a property transaction anymore. This was a wall they'd built around her, signed, restricted, sealed, while she was too disoriented to understand what was happening. I called Diana. She wasn't surprised. We file a HIPAA authorization under your durable power of attorney, she said. Your POA predates theirs and designates you as healthcare agent. The clinic is legally obligated to honor it over any subsequent restriction. I'll prepare the paperwork before end of day. 2 days later, I had the records. Dr. Sims agreed to schedule a current evaluation. The system moved slowly, but it moved. My mother came to the house on a Wednesday evening. She did not bring food or flowers or any of the things a person brings when they are visiting an elderly woman they love. She brought a brochure, Evergreen Ridge Memory Care, full color photography of a garden courtyard and a smiling activities director. She laid it on the same kitchen table where Diana and I had spread the documents 48 hours earlier. Private rooms, a full activities calendar, lovely grounds. She smoothed the brochure with both palms. Your father and I have toured it twice. If we move her before the holidays, we can have the house prepared for listing by the 1st of December. I looked at her, the pearl earrings, the structured blazer, the careful composure. You already have a buyer, I said. You're not preparing for listing. You're staging for a close you've already scheduled. Her expression flickered. One brief crack quickly filled. Celeste, I know this feels personal to you. You've always been attached to this house in a way the rest of us. It's her home. She doesn't want to leave it. She doesn't have the capacity to evaluate what she wants right now, my mother said. Her voice was still controlled, but the warmth had fully drained out. Your uncle's situation is serious. This house resolves it. It covers her care. It stabilizes his business. It relieves your father of a burden he was never equipped to carry alone. This is what responsible family management looks like, after everything I've done for this family. Her voice thinned just slightly, after every year of organizing and managing and holding it together. The closing documents are already at the title company, she said, gathering her things, December 3rd. This is already in motion, Celeste. She left the brochure on the table. I almost let them have it that night. It would have been simpler. But there is a particular kind of grief that arrives when you watch someone place an expiration date on another person's worth, and once you've felt it, you cannot unfeel it. If this story is sitting somewhere personal for you right now, type "I see her" in the comments and stay with me. Because what happens at that closing table is why I'm telling this. I had 11 days. The closing was set for December 3rd at Meridian Title Group on Central Avenue. My mother had scheduled it the way she scheduled board meetings, efficient, conclusive, not open for discussion. I sat in Diana's conference room the following morning and laid out the options. Option 1, file an emergency petition with the probate court to block the transaction. Clean and effective, Diana confirmed, but slow, public, and expensive. It gave Marcus and my parents time to move Gran, hire competing attorneys, cloud the evidentiary record. Time to make me look like the unstable one. Option 2, let the closing proceed, walk in with the documents. Let the truth perform its function when it meets instruments that cannot survive scrutiny. Diana looked at me steadily. If you appear at that closing with the recorded trust deed and the capacity documentation, the title officer will resolve this herself. She cannot insure a title that is in active dispute. She will not record a deed she knows is defective. Title officers carry personal liability for those decisions. No one with professional standing takes that risk. She removed her glasses and set them on the table. No courtroom, no emergency hearings. Just documents on a table in front of witnesses, the buyer, the agents, your family, and the officer. The paperwork speaks. We don't have to. I thought of Gran's note. When they arrive for the house, open this. She hadn't directed me to a courthouse. She'd handed me a folder. Let the documents speak, Diana said. 11 days. I started counting. Day 1 of 11, I filed a report with the State Elder Financial Abuse Hotline. I sat in my car in the municipal parking lot and gave the intake coordinator everything the cognitively impaired 80. Your old woman, a power of attorney executed during a documented hospital. Admission, an off-market property sale priced below comparable value, a son positioned to profit while serving as seller's representative. The coordinator was calm, methodical, and not remotely surprised. She had heard this before in different cities with different names. We'll assign an investigator and issue a case number within 72 hours, she said. Given your close date, I'll mark this as time sensitive. I thanked her and sat there for a moment, watching an elderly man and woman walk arm in arm into the library across the street, laughing at something the wind carried away before I could hear it. Normal safe. When I returned to the house, Diana had left a voicemail. Celeste, something came up that you should know. Adult Protective Services informed me that your report is not the first one they've received on this situation. An anonymous complaint was filed approximately 8 weeks ago. No identifying information left, so they couldn't pursue it, but the file already exists. 8 weeks ago, right around the time Marcus had placed the pen in Gran's hand for the September documents. Someone else had seen it, someone who hadn't left their name but had been troubled enough to make the call. I didn't know who then, but the file already existed. The investigator wasn't starting from scratch. Day 4, my father came alone. He pulled into the driveway in his old station wagon, not the car he drove to the club. but the one he used for errands, the one nobody paid attention to. He sat behind the wheel for a long time before getting out. He came in through the back door, the door he'd used since childhood, the door that still stuck slightly on its frame the same way it had for 30 years. He didn't greet me. He stood in the kitchen and looked at the room, the cabinets his mother had refinished by hand, the small window above the sink where she'd hung a crystal that scattered light across the floor on bright mornings. She used to sing in here, he said. His voice was barely above a breath. Carole King. Every Sunday, I remember, he sat at the table, his hands lay flat on the surface, and they were trembling. I want you to know I never wanted any of this, Celeste. He didn't look at me. Aaron's situation, Marcus's situation. Diane convinced me it was the only you could still end this, Dad. He looked at me for one unguarded second, a full second, and I saw him not as the composed, golf-tanned man who had reduced me to a footnote at every holiday dinner, but as someone who had grown up eating cereal at this same table, who had been 10 years old in this kitchen, who still remembered the singing. His phone buzzed on the table. He looked at the screen. My mother, he stood up. He left through the back door. He didn't stop to say goodbye to his own mother, asleep in the next room. I washed the cup he'd used and put it away. Day 5. I bought a cake. Nothing elaborate. A small vanilla round from the bakery 2 streets over. Cream cheese frosting, 1 candle. I set it on the kitchen table at 3 in the afternoon. 2 plates, 2 forks, 2 cloth napkins. I made a pot of tea. Gran, come sit with me. She shuffled in from the living room, reading glasses on her head, a folded crossword in her cardigan pocket. She saw the cake and went still. Whose birthday? Ours, I said. We're doing it over. She sat down. I lit the candle. She studied the flame for a long moment, the way someone looks at a thing they are trying to press into memory, to hold in place by force of concentration alone. Make a wish, Gran. She closed her eyes. She blew. The flame went out cleanly on the first breath. What did you wish for? She looked at me with those rare clear eyes. I wished you would stay. We ate cake with proper forks. She told me about the roses she'd planted along the front walk the year I was born, about the kitchen table which had come from her own mother's house, carried on the back of a borrowed truck, and that each dent and ring stain on its surface represented a gathering she'd hosted, a meal she'd made, a year she'd lived in this house. Then she set her fork down and looked at me directly. Don't let them take the table, she said, quiet. Fierce, I won't. The table stays. I cleared the dishes, wrapped the leftover cake, and wrote on the foil in marker, Gran's birthday, 2nd edition. 4 days until the closing, day 6. The phone calls started. A distant relative called first. Careful, sympathetic, relaying my mother's version of events, that I was destabilizing a family decision, that I was being emotional, that I didn't fully comprehend the financial reality my uncle was facing, then my mother's friend from the hospital board, then Marcus's accountant. Then a woman from Gran's own garden society who had known Eleanor for 35 years and didn't seem to fully understand she was delivering a scripted message. Each call carried the same underlying text. Celeste is overreaching. Celeste is difficult. Celeste is letting her attachment to a house blind her to the responsible path. My mother had built the story before I had a chance to offer mine. I didn't call anyone back. I didn't post anything publicly. I didn't plead my case to anyone. Diana had told me, the documents speak for themselves. You don't have to. At 9 o'clock that evening, my phone rang one more time. It was my grandmother's younger sister, Aunt Rosalind, 83, still in the house she'd lived in for 50 years, sharp as January. Celeste, her voice was dry and exact. I am not going to repeat a single word Patricia has been circulating. I want you to know that I know what? Your grandmother phoned me last summer, August. She told me she'd been to see an attorney. She said she'd put everything in order while she still could. She said, if anything ever happens and Celeste needs backup, you back Celeste up. She paused, so I am backing you up. Whatever you need, call me. 3 days until the closing, day 7. Diana and I confirmed the details. Meridian Title Group, December 3rd, 2 o'clock, Conference Room A. The escrow officer was a woman named Brenda Carmichael, 19 years in the business. Diana's contact described her as thorough and principled. The buyer was Meridian Capital Holdings, a regional acquisition firm specializing in residential cash purchases, buy below market, renovate, resell, or rent. Their representative was a man named Thomas Quill, who had been copied on every document in the transaction. The listing agent was Joanna Hartley. Marcus and my father would attend as sellers' representatives. My mother would be there because she managed everything. Diana had made one final informal call to the title company the previous evening and learned something that gave her pause. Brenda Carmichael had flagged this file 3 weeks earlier, during the preliminary title search. She'd identified that the property was held in a trust and had contacted Joanna Hartley for clarification. Hartley had submitted a signed affidavit claiming the trust had been formally dissolved and the property retitled to Elinor individually. Carmichael had accepted it provisionally, but had noted in her internal file that no recorded dissolution deed existed in the county records. The affidavit, it was a lie. The trust had never been dissolved. The deed was still on the public record, exactly where it had been filed 16 months ago. The transaction had been proceeding on a foundation of fabricated paperwork. Diana looked at me. Joanna Hartley told the title officer the trust was gone. It isn't. The deed is still recorded. It's public information. The closing is already compromised. All it needs is someone to put the original on the table. Here is something about documentation that people chronically underestimate. It does not raise its voice. It does not get tired. It does not forget. It simply sits on the table and waits. If you have ever been the quiet one in a room full of loud people, this next part belongs to you. Subscribe and stay with me to that table. 2 days remaining. Day 9. Everything was positioned. Diana would represent the trust at the closing as attorney of record. She would bring certified copies of the recorded trust deed, the durable power of attorney, and the capacity evaluation. Connor Marsh would attend as notary witness. The Adult Protective Services investigator had confirmed the case was active in time. Critical, she would not be in the room, but whatever occurred would become part of the formal record. I spent that afternoon at the kitchen table, reviewing every document in the envelope one final time. Trust deed, capacity letter, the September power of attorney with its trembling signature, the listing authorization. The purchase agreement, the hospital discharge summary from mid-September, every date, every signature, every clinical notation aligned. Every piece pointed in one direction. I rehearsed what I would say, short sentences, specific facts. No accusations, no emotion, no raised voice, delivered at the volume of ordinary conversation. Diana had coached me. You are not going to argue with them. You are not going there to change their minds. You are going there as the successor trustee of the Eleanor M. Wren Revocable Living Trust, with every legal right and obligation that designation carries. The documents do the rest. I was not the granddaughter who filed paperwork for a living. I was not the one nobody took seriously at Christmas dinner. I was the person Elinor Wren had chosen, in full possession of her faculties, 16 months before any of this began. That evening I pressed a blouse and set out my shoes, the same low heels I'd worn the night I drove 4 hours through rain to sing to a woman sitting alone at a birthday table. Nobody else had bothered to attend. Tomorrow they would gather to sign for a house that did not belong to them, and I would be there when the documents said so. The night before the closing, I sat with Gran in the living room. She was having a good hour, not a good day, not a good week, but a good hour, which was precious and unpredictable and never to be squandered. She was filling in a crossword with a ballpoint pen. No pencil, she'd always said, was for people who didn't have faith in themselves. Gran, tomorrow is going to matter. And Mem, she didn't look up, 14 across, legal protection instrument. 5 letters. I smiled. Trust. She wrote it in. Then she looked up at me from over her reading glasses. You're staying, I'm staying. She reached into her cardigan pocket and drew out an old leather glasses case with a tarnished brass clasp she'd carried since before I could remember. She opened it, took out a folded piece of paper and held it out to me. It was a note in her handwriting. Shaky now, but purposeful, not the confident script of 16 months ago, not the collapsed lines of the September forgery. Something in between. The writing of a woman at the edge of the window, pressing her hand against the glass while she still could. For Celeste, keeper of the table, below it her signature. "I'm still here," she said. I folded the note and pressed it into my wallet. In the morning, the folder, the note, and I would go together. Meridian Title Group occupied a compact brick building on Central Avenue with frosted glass and a brass door that had been polished until you could almost see yourself in it. I parked across the street at 1:40. Diana was behind me at 1:50. Connor was already inside. We walked in together. Diana carried her briefcase. I carried the envelope. Conference room held a long oval table, a water carafe, stacked papers at each seat, and the quiet hum of a printer completing its last job. Brenda Carmichael was at the head, arranging the closing package with the deliberate precision of someone who'd run hundreds of these without incident. She looked up when we entered, glanced at Diana, and paused. "I don't have your firm listed as a party in this transaction, MS." "Holt, I represent the Eleanor M. Wren Revocable Living Trust," Diana said. "We have documentation material to this closing." Brenda's pen came to rest on the table. The door behind us opened. My mother entered first. Structured blazer, pearl earrings, expression already calibrated to the correct blend of gracious efficiency and mild impatience. My father followed, gray-faced, studying the floor. Marcus came in behind them, tailored jacket, leather portfolio, the practiced ease of a man who expected the outcome he'd planned for. Behind him, Joanna Hartley with her stack of closing documents fanned in her grip like a hand of cards. And last, Thomas Quill, the buyer's representative in a navy suit. My mother saw me and went still. Celeste, her eyes moved to Diana, to the envelope in my hands, back to me. Her expression didn't break, but something in it shifted, like a set piece being adjusted backstage. "What exactly are you doing here, taking my seat?" I said. I sat down. Diana sat beside me. I placed the envelope on the table in front of me and I waited. The room was very quiet. The printer had stopped. Brenda Carmichael looked at Diana. "You mentioned documentation." "Yes." Diana opened her briefcase and placed 3 items on the table, centered and square, the way a person places evidence they are entirely confident in. First, a certified copy of the recorded trust deed, filed with the county registrar on August 14th, 16 months ago. It conveys the Fenwick Road property in its entirety into the Eleanor M. Wren Revocable Living Trust. MS Wren, she indicated me, is the designated successor trustee, now active. My mother's composure fell. Not all at once, in increments, like a structure losing load, bearing points one by one. Second, the durable power of attorney naming MS. Wren as Eleanor's agent for all financial and health care matters, executed August 14th, notarized. Currently active, Marcus leaned forward. There's a more recent power of attorney that takes precedence, third. Diana set the physician's letter on the table. An executed capacity evaluation by Dr. Avery Sims, Eleanor's neurologist, dated August 14th. It confirms that Eleanor Wren had full legal capacity when these documents were signed. I also have Dr. Sims's current evaluation, completed last week, confirming that Eleanor now lacks the cognitive capacity to enter binding agreements. That means any documents she executed after the onset of her cognitive decline, including the September power of attorney obtained by your family, were signed without the legal competence required. To make them enforceable, the room held its breath. Brenda Carmichael picked up the trust deed. She read it. She cross-referenced it with the title report already in her file. Then she looked at Joanna Hartley with an expression that had gone quite still. "MS Hartley, you submitted an affidavit to this office stating the trust had been dissolved." Joanna Hartley's color drained. I was informed the trust was never dissolved," Diana said. "The recorded deed on file with the county confirms it. This property belongs to the trust. The sale cannot be authorized by any party currently in this room, except the trustee, who is sitting at this table, and who is not authorizing it." Brenda Carmichael set the documents down. She squared her shoulders. Then she said the 5 words that ended everything. "I cannot close this transaction." Thomas Quill closed his portfolio. He looked at Brenda, gave a single nod, and stood. Joanna Hartley began gathering her things without making eye contact with anyone. Marcus pushed back from the table. His voice came out raw, stripped of the easy performance. I have a payment due in 7 weeks, 680,000. If this doesn't close, everything I've built is gone. 3 years, all of it. Mr. Wren, this office has no jurisdiction over your financial obligations, Brenda said. This is her house, I said, the trust's house, and I am the trustee your grandmother appointed. Marcus turned to me. You are going to destroy this family. I kept my voice at exactly the register I'd rehearsed, conversational. Steady, no heat. You tried to sell an 80. Your old woman's home while she sat alone at a birthday table and waited for people who never arrived. You placed a pen in her hand during a hospital admission and had her sign documents she couldn't understand. You filed false documentation with this title company to hide a trust that never stopped existing, and you are asking me to account for the consequences. His mouth opened, nothing came out, his hands were clenched at his sides. My mother was crying now, the loud, overtaken kind that she usually reserved for moments she needed to redirect attention. After everything I have done for this family, my father had not spoken once since entering the room. He sat motionless, staring at the trust deed on the table, at his mother's signature at the date, 16 months ago. Running the calculation, she had known, she had seen through him before any of this had started. She had looked at her only child and with full clarity decided to place her protection somewhere else. Thomas Quill stood at the door. I believe we're concluded here. He nodded once to Brenda and left. Diana spoke into the silence that followed. For the record, an Adult Protective Services investigation into the financial exploitation of Eleanor Wren is currently active. This September power of attorney will be formally challenged in probate. Any further attempt to sell, encumber, or transfer trust property without the consent of the successor trustee will be treated as a legal matter without further notice. My mother stopped crying. She looked at me with her eyes still wet, the expression underneath shifting from grief to something colder and more durable. You will regret this, she said, when Marcus loses everything, when your father has no one. When this family comes apart, you will know you chose a house over your own people. I stood, I picked up the envelope and placed it in my bag. I looked at her, the blazer, the pearls, the tears she had always known exactly how to use. You don't get to put a price on what she's worth, I said. I turned to Brenda Carmichael. Thank you for your professionalism today. Brenda nodded. I'll document this transaction as void and flag the file. You'll have written confirmation before end of business. I walked out of conference room A. Diana came behind me. Connor held the door, December air, cold and absolutely clean. I stood on the sidewalk for a full count of 10 before I remembered to exhale. Diana touched my arm. You handled that exactly right. I did what she asked me to, I said. That's exactly what I mean. You don't get to put a price on what she's worth. I drove back to Fenwick Road with the envelope on the passenger seat, exactly where the gas station flower arrangement had sat 11 days earlier. The house looked the same from the street, hydrangeas along the front walk, porch light on, the silhouette of the recliner through the window curtains. I let myself in. Gran was asleep in her chair, crossword magazine rising and falling on her chest, reading glasses perched on her nose. I knelt beside her and tucked the blanket up around her shoulders. It's done, Gran, I said quietly. The house is safe, she stirred. Her hand found mine, the same thin grip but deliberate. Her eyes opened, drifted, then steadied. Celeste, I'm here. Did you keep the table? I laughed. A real one, the kind that rises from somewhere unexpected and surprises you with its warmth. The table stays, Gran. She smiled. Small, certain, that's my girl. Her eyes closed again. Within 2 minutes her breathing slowed to the easy, even rhythm of deep sleep. I sat on the floor beside her chair and looked through the doorway at the kitchen, the old oak table, dented and ringed and still there, exactly where it had stood for decades. The folder was in my bag, the note was in my wallet, the house was in the trust. For the first time in 11 days I stopped counting. Here is what followed. Marcus's payment came due 7 weeks later. He missed it. The lending institution initiated collection proceedings against his 3 residential development projects, 4 units in various stages of completion, a commercial parcel he'd been sitting on. Marcus Wren Development LLC filed for Chapter 7 protection in February. He sold the imported SUV. Last I heard, he was managing construction projects for another firm, earning roughly a third of what he had made at the height of his business. He never reached out. My mother's standing in Millhaven didn't collapse. It eroded the way reputations erode in small communities, not with a single event, but with accumulated quiet. People talk, Aunt Rosalind talked, Brenda Carmichael's file was thorough and documented. The charitable board my mother chaired began meeting on evenings she wasn't informed about. The holiday gatherings she'd organized for 20 years were quietly consolidated by others. She and my father moved to a smaller place in a neighboring town in the spring. My father emailed once in April, 3 lines, I should have protected her. I didn't, I'm sorry, I read it several times. I kept it. I have not replied. There are apologies that arrive too late to be anything other than a record of what a person eventually came to understand. Adult Protective Services substantiated the elder financial abuse complaint. Over 4 months, through 2 probate proceedings that no one in my family contested, the September power of attorney was formally invalidated. The court designated me as Gran's legal guardian and ratified my permanent role as trustee of her estate. I deferred my bar examination. I took a leave from the firm. I moved into the guest bedroom at Fenwick Road, the room with the water stain on the ceiling I had traced since childhood, and I became the person who made sure Eleanor Wren ate her meals, took her medications, and sat on the porch on mild afternoons when the winter light came low and golden through the bare hydrangea stems. It was not the professional trajectory I'd mapped out. It was the right place to be. Her memory was fading. Mine never would. That was always the plan. On a Wednesday in March, I baked a cake, vanilla, cream cheese frosting. Nothing elaborate. I set it on the kitchen table, the table that had traveled on the back of a borrowed truck from Gran's mother's house, the table that had survived 5 decades of family gatherings and one attempted theft, and I put out 2 plates, 2 forks. Gran came in from the living room, whose birthday. No one's, it's Wednesday. I thought we'd have cake because we can. She sat down, she picked up her fork. She took a bite and closed her eyes for a long moment. This is my recipe, she said. It is good, don't change it. We ate in the kitchen with the winter sun cutting low through the window, the crystal above the sink scattering small fragments of light across the table surface. The table held the same as always. A person's value does not have an expiration date. And the quietest kind of love in a family is often the kind that stays at the table when everyone else has left. That's my story. 1 empty birthday table, 1 sealed envelope, and a grandmother who had already done everything necessary long before anyone realized she'd started. If this reminded you to check on someone you love, do it today. Don't wait for the birthday no one shows up to. Like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to Unspoken Drama Stories. I'll be here for the next one.